What is up, everybody? I realized that we just went like instantly live, and I'll explain a little bit about that here in just a second. There's been some technical things going on in the back end with my computer over the course of the last 3 weeks. I've had issues leading up to every show every Monday for the last 3 weeks. So tonight we finally got the laptop back up and running, but it has nothing on it set up ready to go for the show because we just got it back from the Apple Store. And so unfortunately, there was no like intro title graphic or anything like that. And the audio might be really hot. So if you are watching live, let us know in the comments how the audio levels are tonight, because I might need to kind of adjust things on the fly. This might be really loud right now. I have no way of knowing because of just how things are connected currently. But I'm excited because tonight's show, episode number 190, has been a show that I've been looking forward to for a long time. Our guest tonight is like pure badass, and I can't wait to talk to her. I've heard legends about her for the last 5 or 6 years. Basically, when I started ultra running, people were like, oh my God, have you heard about this woman in Washington who's been running these incredible ultras, and she does back-to-back ultras and all that? I'm like, this is insane. So to have Phan on the show tonight is an honor and a privilege, and it's really great to be able to sit down and talk to someone who's done so many ultras of such caliber. So tonight's show is going to be a lot of fun. I am going to play the intro graphic. There will not be music, so you will be sitting in silence for about 10 seconds, unfortunately. But that'll also help with the podcast. I'll be able to see exactly where the intro is. So welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 190, with a silent intro. Here we go. Yes, what is up, everybody? You okay? It was a very soft yay. Welcome, everyone, to Ginger Runner Live, episode number 190. I'm your host, Ethan Newberry, joined by, of course,
Kim, and I'll be in the chat room as always, you guys. So if you guys have questions for our guest, which will be appearing soon, just ask them in the chat room. We'll be pulling them throughout the hour.
I feel like there's going to be a lot of questions tonight because our guest is very experienced when it comes to ultra running. We're going to talk to her all about how she got into it, where her origin story is, and also what she's accomplished just this year alone. It'll certainly make your jaw drop because it's pretty badass. Before we intro our guest, before we introduce Phan on tonight's show, of course, there's some people that I have to thank. Mr. Brian Sands for being a top-tier Patreon supporter. Brian Sands has been at the top tier now for months, and we've been able to follow his running journey with his weight loss all the way to running his very first marathon on October 8th, and now training for his very first ultra marathon, which is really great. So Brian, hopefully we'll get some questions for you answered tonight by Phan, and maybe how to accomplish and conquer your first ultra. I know there's lots of viewers who are always very interested about that sort of thing. Rick Bjarnason out of British Columbia will be helping us with our website. I'm so excited. We had a meeting last week. Things are, the ball is rolling this week. We start to kind of figure out exactly what needs to happen. But Rick has also been a top tier Patreon supporter now for a while. And it's awesome because he's also an ultra runner, fan of the show, viewer. And he's going to be helping with a complete redesign on gingerrunner.com, which is long overdue. So this will be fantastic. And finally, Chris Lee. Big shout out to Chris Lee over in Hong Kong, who's the founder and starter of Trailblazer, which is a great resource for those who live or visiting Hong Kong and hope to find trail running resources because there's trails within 15-20 minutes of the city. So Chris is doing some incredible things over there with the trail running community. So big shout out to Chris, who's also a top tier Patreon supporter and longtime supporter of the show. It's great to have him on board. So that's it. Let's intro our guest tonight. I'm very excited to have her on the show. As I mentioned in the pre-show, this is someone who I have heard about pretty much as soon as I started ultra running. Her name is spoken amongst the community as a legend, just an all-around badass. She probably doesn't realize this. That's the other thing, is she's very, very humble, and she's the kind of person that shows up to events, shows up to races, gets it done, clobbers it, and then disappears into the night. And people are like, did you know that Phan ran this race like 6 times or something in the same time that you managed to finish it once? And I'm like, what? That's crazy. So I'm excited to introduce her to you tonight. Many of you may not have heard of you. Some of you are very familiar with Phan.
And there's a lot of you that are already browsing her ultra sign up right now.
Just so you know, if you do browse her ultra sign up, it's it's going to make you feel lazy. And that is okay, because I feel like Phan has a story that's probably very similar to a lot of us. She's been featured in multiple magazine articles and videos and all that sort of thing. And Phan is just an all-around badass. So without further ado, welcome to the show for the first time, Phan. Yay! How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you guys?
We're good. We're getting.
Thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah,
Thanks for asking.
we're getting acclimated to this Northwest weather, which you are quite familiar with because you are a local resident. Yes.
Yes.
How long have you been living up in the Northwest?
Since I was probably 4 or 5.
Oh, so you're a lifer, just like us. Well,
Yeah.
except for that brief period where we were not up here.
You're right.
What is it about the Northwest that you really love, and what's kept you up here?
Well, you know, I wasn't really into the outdoors when I was younger. I come from an Asian family, and they don't exercise. They don't do anything except for spend time with each other, which is good. You know, it's very family oriented. But we did racket sports when I was a kid. Tennis. I did badminton when I was in high school. But all those things were fairly limited to, you know, a tennis court or a court for the badminton. You didn't really explore. So I really didn't do that until I was after college.
So, I mean, your resume in Ultra alone is bonkers. Someone in the chat room just calls you a stud, and I'm like, I can't agree more. You are an absolute stud when it comes to this sport. What got you into ultra running? Was it a quick transition? Was it like, oh, I trained for a marathon and I'm going all into ultra, or was it a long drawn out kind of work your way up sort of thing?
Actually, it was just after my first ultra, just like a lot of people. I was Cle Elum. I had a difficult race like most people have in their first ultra, and that's what I liked about it the most. So I pretty much outgrown the marathons because I had done well over 150 of them by the time I did my first ultra. And so, or not over 150, but a decent amount. I have close to 150 marathons now, but I had done a lot. And so it felt like, what's next? And, you know, when I got into the 50K, it wasn't immediately, oh, I got to do 100. I wanted to work my way up, and I did. It took me, I think, a couple years to do my first 100. So I wanted to be ready for that distance.
I mean, that seems normal, but things have obviously don't mean this in a negative connotation, but things have definitely changed to be a little bit more abnormal in that you run a lot of ultras and big ones and hard ones. So I'm super curious that the time period between running your first 50K, running your first 100, did that just open your mind to go, what I thought was impossible is now possible, and you just like dove full in? Or how long did it take you to really, like, for example, how long did it take you to run your second 100? And was that a long period of time? And when did it really become habitual?
Well, actually, I was entered in the trophy series for Trail Runner, and I was just trying to get as many races as I could to win the series. And so I chose my first 100, the Eagle. Probably wouldn't have been my very first one, because if I had to do it all over again, but it was part of the series and I got points for it. And then the next one was that Lost Soul, which both of them were in Canada. And so I just earned a lot of points. And so I just kept going to specific races because of what was available. It wasn't until after that series that I started to explore more mountainous hundreds. Those were more urban hundreds. There's not a lot of single track. Lasso had more single track than the Eagle. The Eagle's mostly Forest Service roads. So I kind of limited myself to those races, and I was scared actually of doing mountainous 100s because I felt like I was going to get lost, just like your typical first 100 miler. Yeah. I wasn't going to handle being out there that long very well. But I don't know. My fears, were not really. Well, they didn't come true. I mean, I ended up doing just fine. And I had a lot of friends who had done those races, and I learned a lot from them.
I want to remind everyone that we are, of course, live. If you have any questions for Phan on tonight's show, please don't hesitate to drop into the live chat room on the YouTube page and ask away, because Kim has already pulled aside a bunch. So let's go ahead and get to one of those now.
Yeah, so Phan, you just mentioned the number of marathons that you had run. Morgan had a question in the chat room asking, what got you into marathons in the first place?
So during my physician assistant school training, I had to go to Arizona. And so I just started running just to stay in shape. And then I came back and I did a 12K with my sister. And I just, even a 12K got me hooked. And I just kept getting, half marathons. And I decided to try to qualify for Boston. And then I did Portland Marathon. And I did Boston. I haven't done any of the other big city marathons. It's the only big city marathon I've done. But I found out that there were a lot of races around here, and eventually I joined the Marathon Maniacs and saw what other people were doing, and I kind of got caught up in the, kind of this. I think running just kind of, started to become very popular about the time that I started running, and so I just kind of got caught up with everybody else's plans and enthusiasm. So. I forgot the question though. I can't remember what you asked me.
Yeah, what ended up getting you into your first marathon?
Yeah, it was the 12K, and then just getting up, just increasing my mileage. And I trained on my own. I used Hal Higdon's marathon training book. I didn't train with anybody for my first marathon. I had no running partners. I just kind of did it on my own and followed the his 12-week plan or whatever, and it worked out.
Again, it's awesome to have you on the show. Like, even as I scrolled through your resume in the last week, just knowing that I wanted to get Phan on the show, it's just like, man, I remember the first story that I heard about you, Phan. It was after I finished the 2015 Gorge Waterfalls. That year, I think, was the 50K. But someone's like, oh, man, that's great. You just finished the 50K. Did you know that Phan ran the 100K and then also finished the 50K? And I was like, what? When was 100-miler not enough? Because you've run so many hundreds now that it seemed like the challenge of the 100 was less. I guess it was less of a challenge for you, and you were looking for additional challenges, back-to-back, stuff like that. So when was the 100-miler maybe just not enough?
Well, I have to blame a couple of friends of mine for that. So my friend Tony Covarrubias and his wife, Sean, they did a 150-mile race in Illinois, in Pekin, Illinois, put on by Andy, I forgot his last name, but they said, you got to come and do this race. There weren't very many races over 100 miles, and so I went with them to Chicago, and we ran around a 10-mile muddy loop, and I finished, and I finished pretty well. And I thought, maybe I have something here that I'm good at, and I can, I've never been the fastest runner out there. I've had some good performances, but it really all depends on who shows up at a race. But in small races, I tend to do well. In bigger races, I tend to be about the middle of the pack. So to kind of get myself motivated more, I figured, well, I'll focus on what I'm good at, which is just to go longer. So the 150 in Illinois was my first really long distance, and it was a while before I did a 200, but there wasn't anything available, so that's why I created my own race. And I just wanted to see, can I do the next step? And that's how my pigtails race came about.
Pigtails is one that, now that we live in the Northwest, it's something I've heard about long before we moved back home. But explain Pigtails to us, because I want to talk a little bit about it on the show tonight. But yeah, can you explain the format? It's a bit different than a regular 100-miler or plus.
Yeah. So not far from where I live is it's about a 9.4 mile loop that's rolling, and it's a good training ground for marathoners because that's a fairly hard surface, gravel, good footing, so they don't need a lot of technical skills. But because it was close to home, and I could, didn't have to carry a lot, and you could just have some good support, I felt it would be a good 200-mile race, just like the one in Chicago. You just do multiple loops, and you can have your friends join you, and you can have, an aid station every 5 miles, and it just promoted probably better chance of finishing a 200 miler. So the first year I put it all together. I ran it with the help of friends who kind of manned it while I ran. And then when I was done, I took over the race directing duties and watched everybody else come in. It included 150 and 100 mile too, for those who wanted to try the shorter distances. But I'm kind of proud of that race, because for the 100 milers, I had a little button that says I only did the half, and it seems unfair, but you know, I always want to give kudos to the people who really choose the harder option.
This is what is so amazing about Phan is just knowing that a 200 miler is like normal, and a 100 miler is half the effort. In my mind, I'm going, I still have the hardest time wrapping my brain around running 100 miles. Like I've done it once. It was very difficult. Phan beat me by an hour that year. She also ran Cascade Crest. So you also ran through the storms, but it's one of those things where I'm still tough to wrap my brain around getting through that distance. But we're talking about someone who runs multiple hundreds per year, multiple 200s per year. And that's kind of what I wanted to talk about now. So you're talking about pigtails, which is 100, 150 or 200 mile distance, and you get time and stuff like that to do these loops. But this year you crushed 200 milers, including the Bigfoot 200 and the most recent, well, I guess more 240 miles, the Moab 240 as well. How was that for you to conquer these huge distances across different terrains, completely different terrains? How was that in a single year?
It was good. It is a good year for me. I mean, I think every race I did this year was, my performances were, I was very happy about them. Bigfoot, it was my third time doing it. I knew the course. I wanted to give a chance at trying to win it for the first time. The last 2 years prior to that, I'd gotten second and third. So I had a home court advantage, and the other ladies, you know, had never been on the course, so I knew how to pace it. And I, you know, it's always hard in the 200. I had some issues, but overall, I felt like it's probably the best race I ever run of, you know, any distance, 100 or longer. And then Moab, because that was a longer distance. I'd never been in that part of the country before. I didn't know what to expect on running on slick rock or in the, you know, totally exposed course. I didn't want to race that one. I just wanted to finish it. So I tried to be smart about it. And what generally happened was I suffered during the day, during the heat, and then I accelerated at night. So I would be able to, you know, catch up to just the people who I ran around with during the day. I think that's always a good gauge to see where you're at, is if you don't lose too much time around the people that you've been running around for most of the race. So, but that again was overall pretty successful. I got lost at the very end, which sucked, but I only lost probably 30 minutes. But, you know, at the time that I wasn't lost, I was just off the wrong trail, but I climbed up a very, you know, sketchy hill, and to get back down was pretty scary. And so I kind of had a little panic attack up there before I just forced myself to calm down and get back to where I needed to be. And then I finished.
It's incredible. You won Bigfoot and you placed 6th female at Moab, which it's incredible. But that's not all that you were able to accomplish just this year alone. I mean, the number of ultras is huge. But 100 milers, we started the year with the Orcas Island 100 miler, Lumberjack 100 miler, Bigfoot 200, Cascade Crest, Plain 100, which is gnarly in its own right, the Moab 240, Flagstaff to Grand Canyon Stagecoach 100 miler, and this weekend we'll talk a little bit about this in a bit, but the Quadzilla, and I'm really intrigued by this one too, but we'll talk about that in just a moment. So Phan, I have to give you some applause, because what we have elites on this show. We have lots of people on this show from around the world that talk about big accomplishments and big victories and stuff like this. This is insane. Like, this is amazing how many hundreds you managed to complete, races you won, 200 milers you managed to complete all in one calendar year. It's insane. Phan.
Oh, thank you.
Yes. I hope someone's making you some sort of buckle that's like this big, just for like a 2017 Phan buckle.
Like a platter.
Like a platter. It's a plate on a leather strap or something. I just can't wrap my brain around it. It's amazing. So now I want to start getting into like the specifics. I want to try to pick your brain, Phan. You've been in this sport a long time. How have you seen it change? Is it changing for the better? Do you see changes that are good or bad? Or how have you seen it change in the last decade plus?
Well, you know, for myself, I do miss the good old days. I mean, there are a lot of runners out there who've been doing this way longer than I have. So it's hard for me to feel like I'm, you know, a legend or, you know, a fixture yet. But I did start running at the time when the races were smaller, and it was a much smaller community. I felt a lot more when I'm out in the woods. I felt a lot more out there. But now there's so many people. You know, I feel a little overcrowded, but I understand that's part of, you know, the times, and I have to accept it. But if you ever run with me, don't feel bad if I don't want to talk to you in the beginning, because that's how I am. I'm going to be grumpy if you try to talk to me while we're doing a 4,000-foot climb and I'm trying to catch my breath. But I do miss the small events and just, you know, the few people that, you know, you see at every race. So there's a lot of new faces that I'm not, you know, I don't know. And you're right. A lot more people know me than I know them. And so it's hard. It's hard for me to kind of just be in my own little space. And I try to be, you know, friendly when I can, but most times I'm just trying to focus on my own race. So I don't know. I do miss the old days.
And as a race director and as someone who participates in a lot of events that, you know, still are claiming to have that old school vibe, do you see that? Is it still around? Like, are you still able to find those events that have that old school vibe?
Yes. Yeah, for sure. You just got to find them.
It's just, it's been a conversation that's kind of popped up recently in the community is have things changed too much, or are things getting too popular and that sort of thing? And it's always interesting to talk to someone who's been around for a lot longer than we have in the sport, and to kind of find out their opinion. So it's always interesting. Do you think
maybe that's why I like the 200s, because not a lot of people are doing them yet. There's a huge sense of community in the 200-mile races, because, you know, you stick around. People don't go home. You know, people don't go home after they finish. They stick around. They wait for the last runners to, you know, come in. You know, I had to leave Moab because I had to get back to work. It was a 1.5-day drive back. But if I had more time, I would have stuck around, you know, to the very end and stayed for the award ceremony. But and I do that Bigfoot because Bigfoot is actually only a 2-hour drive away from my home. So I'll make the time to stick around for that. And so every time I finish Bigfoot, I feel like I cannot wait to do that again, because I get so fulfilled by it that I love to see everybody, you know, come in. The ones after me, obviously, I can't see the ones in front of me, but they all just look so happy, and I guess, you know, you see that at hundreds too. But I think if you run the 200 and you know what they've been through it because you've been through it, it's a special thing.
We had Courtney Dauwalter on the show recently too, and she said the same thing about specifically Moab is just the community, because I think that was her first 200 event.
Not her last.
Not her last, no, for sure, but definitely one of her first, and one of Candace's too. But just the amount of people that stayed at camp and made it a point to be a part of that community, and that was really cool. I noticed it at Cascade more than any other race that I've been a part of.
Old school feel,
and it was amazing what that felt like. And every year we've gone back since, it has not changed. It's really neat. It's really neat. And there are some races that I've witnessed where it's just kind of, you know, people just go off and do their own thing, or, you know.
Especially if you're back, like mid or back of the pack,
Right.
or like myself, you come across the finish line and like everybody's gone.
The
Or they're
lights
just doing
are
their
off.
own thing.
The arch is down. And,
Right.
and there's only one person there. Like, all right, cool.
And
We
it's
need to get
you.
you out. It's me. Yes, me. It's like, we need to get you out.
We need to go.
We need to go home.
Well, I really think all the hundreds in Washington still have that old school feel. James makes Orcus very, he makes it even more special in that you can't have a pacer. You can have crew, but you can't have a pacer. So that you feel when you finish that race, you feel like, wow, you really did it. It's a hard race. And Badger is really great. I mean, there's these are fairly small races, but I think that's why you get that old school feel. Is they tend to be smaller. But yeah, I've gone to big races too, and there's something to be said about having a lot of like Western, a lot of spectators and a lot of support, and you feel like a superstar even if you're middle or back of the pack. No matter where you are in the race, those kind of races do still make you feel like you're pretty darn special.
I want to remind everyone that, of course, we are live with Phan, talking ultra running and some of her incredible accomplishments. If you have questions, drop them into the chat room. We've got a bunch.
A ton of questions.
I could just keep talking with Phan, but let's get to a couple of these live questions.
Yeah, a question from Sarah in the chat room. Do you enjoy races or adventure runs more? And she gives the example of the Issy Alps 100.
For those unfamiliar, the Issy Alps 100 is I guess Phan could probably speak to this more than I can, but it's a 100-miler it's not a sanctioned race, but it is something that very few humans have ever accomplished out here in the Issaquah Alps. So that's more of an adventure run. Which do you prefer?
I'm leaning towards more adventure runs, these days, because I like to work through things on my own. I do races mainly for the safety, as a woman, I just don't think I don't take anything away from women who go out and do things on their own. I think they're extremely, brave and fearless, but I prefer to have some security, and that's why I do so many races. But with Issaquah Alps, I know all the trails. I have friends who can come and support me and be with me, and so I do like doing these, training runs, whatever, and long runs that aren't races but can serve as maybe an FKT or something like that. I do enjoy those because I feel like you can really push yourself.
Sweet.
And we were just talking about Western States briefly. Chuck Hall in the chat room asked, when will you race at Western States, or is that even on your radar?
I try every year to get in. So one year I didn't sign up because I don't know why I didn't. I think because I was going to attempt a 200, and I thought, well, I can't do Western if I'm going to do a 200. So I lost my lottery tickets for when I didn't sign up. So I had to start all over again. So I think I only have like 4 or 5 tickets now, unless I buy a bunch more through there, buy extra tickets kind of thing. So it's probably going to be a while before I get back in.
Yeah,
but I'd like to do it again.
Yeah, you've run it before, right?
Just once. I was the second to the last of the 2-time losers. So there was one group after me who had tried to get in twice and they didn't, and so I was the year before that. Got it.
Yeah, it's for no shortage of the fact that you run qualifiers. Most of your races are hard rock. I mean, Cascade Crest is hard rock and states qualifier. So are you also applying for hard rock simultaneously?
No, I don't tend to do so well at altitude. I've DNF'd at Bighorn, at the not Zion, but the other one. Anyway, I don't do well at altitude, but I actually am getting better. I did a lot of sauna work, and that helped with my altitude training. This year, I had no problems at Moab when I was up at 10,000 feet. So hard rock is a maybe now. Before it was no. I don't think I could ever do that because I don't think I could get through the altitude. But it's a maybe, and once I get tired maybe of the 200s. At 200s, I would consider it, but then I'll be like, oh, much older, and then I'd really have trouble with hard rock.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I'm also really curious, does anything scare you anymore? Is there anything that really challenges your mental capacity? Because it's obvious that you can get through anything, but I'm just curious if there's anything that scares you.
Actually, I used to think that I could just get through anything as long as I slowed down and ate and maybe rested a little bit. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I must have been overtrained because I had a really bad race at Cascade. It was the only Cascade that I DNF'd. But after No Name Ridge at mile 80, and you have to do all those climbs, I cramped so bad that I could not move an inch. I had to. It took me 3 hours to get from mile 80 to mile 84. So I had to DNF at 84 at the base of Thorpe Mountain. I had to wait till everybody came through, and they helped hike me out. James Varner and a few other people came. I had to be piggybacked off on James because my legs were not working at all. And so, and I don't know. I mean, before then, I just thought I can get through anything. After that, it kind of shook my world, and I had to, you know, rethink things. And I think my fitness is better this year, and so I was able to handle the load that I put on it. But I still am very careful to know that my body does have a limit.
And are you like, when I feel like when I get into deep training for ultras, things begin to feel a little bit easier. You know, 50Ks don't seem like ultras. They just seem like training runs and that sort of thing. And you can kind of gradually work your way up. You, having now done this for so many years, do you feel the same way, where hundreds are almost training runs for the 200s and that sort of thing? Do you look at it that way at all?
This year I did. Like, I felt my Issy Alps was a good training run for my 200s, carrying a heavy pack, you know, just putting that kind of load on my body. This year I did, but I know it can change very fast. And you know, we all hate to admit it, but we do get older, you know, and I had to adjust how I trained and how I you know, recovered. I used to do back-to-back long runs, like, you know, one day do 8 hours and another day do another 8 hours. But as I got older, and I'm not that old yet, I don't really like to focus on how old I am, but I understand my body is changing. So I found that I had a difficult time recovering from those long training runs and continuing my race schedule. So now I do like 3 to 4 hours, but slightly more intense runs, you know, on one day, and then another run 2 hours. They're not 8-hour runs on back-to-back long days anymore, because I need my body to recover, and that's worked out really well for me.
Yeah, and it seems like the races that you are running, those tend to be those long workouts. I mean, you are still running 50Ks and 100 milers and stuff like that. So that's interesting that you're kind of going down that path. Before we get to another couple live questions, I know this has probably already popped up 100 times here, but nutrition, I'm curious, do you do anything specific as far as your day-to-day, and what do you do in these big events? Are you eating real food? Is that kind of where you're leaning, or do you do gels and the supplements?
Well, I just kind of do a balanced diet now. I guess I try to stay away from a ton of carbs. I did try the, you know, high fat, low carb diet. I did do that for a few months. I started having kind of chest pains, and I don't know why. I checked my cholesterol. It went up a lot versus what literature says that it helps your cholesterol. I have a family history of high cholesterol. It kind of freaked me out. So I decided I shouldn't be eating a lot of, you know, fats and certain things that I think I just kind of adhere to a more balanced diet, healthy carbs, but not a ton of carbs. And that seems to be working for me. During races, it changes. I mean, you know, people say, wow, you must have this all dialed in. And I cannot say that I do. Every race is different. You know, shorter race, you're running faster, higher pace. I'm going to do all gels, you know. And then longer races, I will eat real food. It was strange because one year I did Bigfoot, and I I was like, okay, nuts were doing, I really craved nuts and they gave me long lasting energy. And I thought, wow, that's it. That's the key. I just need to carry a lot of nuts. And then, 2 weeks later, I did Cascade. I had all the nuts available to me. I didn't carry as much gels and I couldn't eat the nuts and found that I needed the gels because I was moving a little faster. I mean, we're not talking, lightning speed here, but the pace was faster. And so I needed the energy quicker than nuts could provide me. And so I'm like, well, I don't get it. I thought I had this figured out, but I really can't say I have anything dialed in. I guess I just try to give my body what it needs and hope that it will respond.
I mean, I think that's like the best advice because this is someone who runs incredible long distances and still trying to figure it out. Like, I think that's testament to everyone's a little bit different. Everyone's nutrition will be different on any given day based off of all sorts of factors. We get lots of guests on here that are like, oh, here's what I do and this works. This is what it is and it works. I'm like, ooh, until it doesn't, like, what are you going to do when it doesn't? We have lots of live questions, so let's get to some of these while we have her.
Yeah, prior to nutrition, we were talking a little bit about training. There's been tons of questions about your training. Wing in the chat room asked, since you almost have a race every week or every other week, what does your midweek training look like?
And a full-time job. That's crazy. Yeah, how do you balance it all? And what's it?
Well, believe it or not, I don't run during the week. I just race on the weekends. Now, if they don't have a race on the weekend, then I'll go out in the mountains and do some, hill repeats on, single track trails or something like that. But I really don't have time to run during the week. If I do, it's maybe 1 or maybe 2 5-mile runs. I don't have time for track, but I'd like to incorporate track workouts, but I would like to incorporate maybe once a week of that in the near future. I've gotten into more strength training. So I do those high intensity interval training routines because they're short and they give me a good workout. I try to do that once or twice a week. And then I do an upper body strength workout just so that my bones won't break when I fall and have to put out my hand and break my fall. But I try to maintain some good bone density because I am an Asian woman and my bones probably aren't super strong. Then I do my sauna workouts, which that's a regular thing now. 2 or 3 times a week, I'll try to sit in the sauna for 30 minutes because I think it has helped my fitness and helped with altitude training. Surprisingly, it didn't really help with heat training. I still overheated when I was in Moab or heart races. I don't know why it didn't help with my heat training, but it certainly helped in other aspects. But yeah, my training runs are my races. And to tell you the truth, I do race every single race. Not against other people, but with myself. I look at what I did the year prior, and I'll try to match or do better if I have it in me. So I race with myself. And if I end up beating other people, great.
I love it. That's awesome. Let's get to a couple more live questions.
Yeah, comment from Rick in the chat room. Just wondering if you use a certain style of training plan. Do you have a coach? I know you just kind of mentioned your training schedule there, but are you working with anybody or is everything all you?
Well, I do have a bit of FOMO that I don't have a coach because a lot of my friends do. I work in orthopedic surgery. I'm on call. My schedule is really unpredictable. I need to be able to just kind of do things on my own. I imagine if I did have a coach, it would be like, well, you need to do this and this is what you need to do on this day. And I'd be like feeling guilty if I couldn't get around to it. So I just think that I'm sure there are coaches out there that are very flexible, but for the time being, I don't think a coach is possible for me because I think I'd be wasting their time and my time. And so I just try to be my own coach.
Sweet. Let's get to one more live question here.
A question from Nathaniel. Which race distance do you prefer and does your training regimen change for each distance?
I prefer the 200s because I like to be out there for longer times, but the 100s will suffice because, there's more of those. And what's the second part of the question?
Does your training regimen change for each type of distance?
It does not. I think I have just a very strong base, and like Moab next year, I do more road running training because there was a lot of flat road, gravel, dirt training, and that I think that surprised a lot of people. And so it affected a lot of people's races. I think that's how Courtney, I mean, she's a badass anyway, but she's just a very good flat runner in addition to hills. And so I lacked the flat running strength, and so I probably trained more flat running prior to Moab. So I do alter my training for the terrain. I'll do a lot of hill workouts before Bigfoot with a heavy pack, and so I will look at the race and as it gets closer, do more specific training.
Excellent. I want to talk about an event that just occurred this last weekend. It's I hadn't really heard about it until you posted about it, Phan, and when I read about it, I went, that sounds awesome. It's called the Quadzilla. Can you break down what the Quadzilla is and how it went?
Okay. Sure. Well, I think it's been around, I don't know, for 7-8 years, maybe more. So they're road. They're all road. The first, so 4 marathons in 4 days, but there are 50K options as well. So the first day is on the Brookhaven Trail in Seattle. Starts at Gasworks, and it's 26 miles. It's all flat, short little hills at the end.
This is on Thanksgiving Day, right?
I'm sorry, yes. Yeah. Thanksgiving Day. So that's day 1. Day 2, Friday is another run that used to be on trails, but those trails are being kind of forested right now. And so he moved it to the Inner Urban Trail, which is in Kent, Washington. So another flat bike path. And there's a 50K option for that. So of course I had to do the 50K. And then day 3 is the Ghost of Seattle. That's been around for a very long time. It's gotten huge. That used to be a much smaller race, but now it's just kind of, exploded. Mm-hmm. And all these races have shorter distance, half marathon distance. So half marathon, and a 50K on some days. So I did the 50K on Saturday. That's along Lake Washington Boulevard in Seward Park. So pretty flat. And then the final day is the mother of them all, which is Seattle Marathon. Obviously a lot more runners, but I think that just lifts you and helps you carry through to the end. So that's the 4th day. And so it's fun. I mean, it's different. People always ask me, what's easier, running 100 milers or running 4 marathons in 4 days? And I just have to tell them it's different. You're running a lot faster on your marathon days. Your paces, you're pushing yourself, and you're going to get overuse injuries, and because everything's flat for the most part. And so it is nice to be able to go home and sleep in between and get up the next day, but it takes a while to loosen up. So it is, I think, for an ultra runner, it is kind of a cool thing to do because it is an endurance event.
Yeah.
But it's run by just marathoners too, and they do actually sometimes better because they have the leg speed. And I'm like, where's the hill? When can I walk?
Well, it's an awesome accomplishment. So basically Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, a marathon or more. 2 50Ks Friday, Saturday. So yeah, technically, did you do the Quadzilla Plus? Do they have something? Because you did the 50K option. So
well, yeah, I mean, I don't know. There's a plus, but there was only 2 of us that did the 50Ks. So not a lot of people choose that option. But when you think about it, it's only 10 more miles for the whole weekend. So, yeah. But people they like their marathons. It's just fine.
It's an awesome accomplishment and just something to kind of like put a little period at the end of your incredible season this year. Do you have any other events? I'm assuming you do, but we have 1 month left of the year. What do you have planned for December?
Well, I have 2 marathons and 2 50Ks. So I'm at 28 races this year, including 10 of the hundreds or more. So I do a lot of shorter races. So obviously, I'm sure most people know that I'm shooting for 1,000 marathon/ultras in my lifetime. I'm at 455 right now. Just finished, my 455 on Sunday. So I have over 300 marathon ultras. So more of those are ultras, but I used to average more than 35 to 40 races a year. Now, because of the much longer distances. I'm averaging anywhere from 25 to 30 a year. So I'll finish up with 32 this year.
That's incredible. It's incredible. And to think like, oh, you're shooting for 1,000 marathons or more, you could just do marathons or 50Ks, right? But you could, but you're doing you're like, nah, I'd like.
And I don't get to have 4 marathons to get, for every 100 mile I ran. It doesn't count for 4 races.
Right, exactly. So you're actually putting in more effort to complete these bigger events to get it's awesome. That's just the level at which Phan is running. It's amazing to have you on the show tonight, Phan.
Brian in the chat room says, my legs hurt just thinking about that.
But they'll feel better the more you do it. I promise. It's like, Phan, you're inspiring. Whether you realize it or not, you're inspiring, and you will surely get people out the door who maybe even into ultras who had no idea that they could even do it.
I always have said that other people can do what I do if they put their mind to it. They just don't want to, maybe. But I don't really feel like I'm, super athletic. I just put in the work, and I have a focus, and that gives me, something to look forward to. I'm not burned out. A lot of my friends have burned out, and I haven't burned out yet. I just love it too much.
That's fantastic. Like I said, it's great to have you on the show. I want to remind everyone who's watching live that we will have Phan for the post show. So if you are a Patreon supporter, we'll see you guys in just a couple of minutes. If you are not, consider it. Go to patreon.com/thegingerrunner. For as little as $1 a month, you basically keep the channel alive and well, and you'll get to interact with Phan and ask those questions maybe we weren't asked during the main show. We'll have her just for a little bit of time, because she literally got home from work, jumped on the show. I don't even know if she's had dinner yet or family to take care of or anything like that. So we'll keep her for just a little bit in the post show. But before we get to that, we do something here on the show for first-time guests called the Quickie Question Quiz. Phan, it's very easy. It's a rapid-fire series of questions. This is your chance to answer the Quickie Question Quiz. Give me a thumbs up when you're ready, and we'll just rip through them as fast as we can.
Go.
Okay. What was your very first race?
Portland Marathon.
Favorite place to run currently?
Mount St. Helens.
Road or trails?
Trails.
Bucket list race?
That's a hard one. Well, I mean, I'd love to do hard rock, but I don't know if I'd probably have to pace first somebody.
Guilty pleasure TV show?
Oh, the Food Network. Anything on the Food Network.
Yeah, right. Good answer. Speaking of food, what is your pre-race meal?
English muffin, almond butter with a little jam.
And what is the first thing that you eat post-race indulgence?
I have the pho, but like a couple noodle pho.
That actually sounds really good.
It's so good. You'd have to try it.
And your current running kicks. What did you run Quadzilla in?
Oh, well, the last race was a 3:51 marathon after the first 4 days. I was pretty happy with that.
That's pretty awesome. And what shoes did you wear?
I wore New Balance road shoes.
Nice. And what are your go-to trail shoes?
Salomon.
You answered all of them correctly. Congratulations.
Yay!
You got 100.
Where's my buckle?
Exactly. It's a giant platter on a belt. So do you have social media? Where can people find you or follow up with additional questions?
I'm on Facebook. After every race, I get like 20 more friend requests, and I always wonder, should I accept these friend? I don't even know these people. I mean, I probably talk to them on the trail, and they send me a friend request, and I can't remember. And I don't know. I'm kind of schizophrenic when I accept friend requests. I'm like, well, looks like they have a lot of friends, but I don't know. But yeah, that's the only social media I'm on. I don't really do Twitter. I don't have Instagram.
If you find Phan on Facebook, be very kind, and maybe you'll get added as a friend. Phan, it is awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much. And again, congratulations on an incredible year.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Bye.
And for everyone watching live, thank you very much for tuning in tonight live for Ginger Runner Live episode number 190 with Phan. And a big shout out to Brian Sands, Chris Lee, and Rick Bjarnason for helping to continue to keep Ginger Runner live every Monday at 6 p.m. It's awesome to have them. And all the Patreon supporters, we'll see you guys in just a couple of minutes over at the post show. Am I forgetting anything?
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. I remind everyone that I am going to play the end credits. It's going to be silent. So enjoy the awkward silence while credits roll. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next week for more Ginger Runner Live. Get out there, train hard, race harder, and party the hardest. See ya.